Okay. All right. So can everyone see Nikki's slides, or not if you can't, or put it in the chat? Just a couple quick logistics. Greg will be moderating the chat for us. So Greg, you can wave because you're listed as SitSci at the moment. So if you have questions or troubleshooting things, he'll be in there checking on that throughout. But otherwise, welcome everyone. I'm going to pass the baton over to Nikki real quick to get us kicked off, and then we'll jump into content stuff.
Yeah, so great. Thanks everybody for being here. And hopefully lots of folks will be able to see the recording too. I'm going to be super quick because this is mostly just a chance for the SitSci folks to kind of go through the nuts and bolts of how to do this. But I just kind of wanted to orient everyone to kind of where we are in the process. So this is kind of our quarterly meeting for February. I'll schedule another one in May after this. And just to remind everybody, you know, these are for the pilot sites moving forward. This is a pilot project of our kind of national Leave No Trace sitsci.org citizen science program. So we're concentrating on campgrounds, trails, and litter. And Sarah, if you want to go to the next slide. So, you know, the idea behind this is we're trying to engage the public while also gathering data that will be useful for management. So that's kind of our citizen science and kind of the program that we are attempting here. So next slide. So this is my last slide. This is just kind of where we are. So, you know, the idea of this being a pilot, since this isn't something the BLM has done, we're kind of trying to start a little bit slowly and hopefully build a really useful program that reaches those goals in terms of engaging the public and giving us data that's useful for management. So where we are in the process, we started this, there was a kind of a working group that worked on developing the forms. We kind of decided to do this around litter, campgrounds, and trails because those are things that are issues on many BLM sites. So this is something that would hopefully be relevant for many or most BLM sites. So that's kind of why we centered around those three things. There are lots of other things that we can certainly address with citizen science, and, you know, hopefully we'll get there, but that's just kind of where we started. The group also developed the 3 forums that are going to be on sitsci.org. Well, they're already there, and I think Sarah will be going over those in a little bit more detail. Since we are in a pilot, you know, all of this is still in process. My hope is that we can finish the pilot phase in, you know, about a year-ish, maybe this time next year. You know, if it doesn't go that way, if things aren't going smoothly, that's fine. We can take more time, but hopefully around this time next year, we'll be ready to move on to phase 2. So where we are, we've developed these forums. Right now, everyone's in the pilot sites is going to hopefully start using the app. That's kind of where we're here, so that our sites and our partners can learn how to use the app, and so that we can start getting that out to the public for use. So ideally, you know, over kind of the field season, kind of whatever the high season is, whatever programs you have at your sites, you'll be getting folks to actually start using this app and collecting data. Once we've done that, we'll probably have kind of 2 working groups. One will be looking at the data, trying to see, are we actually getting data that we're going to use for management that's useful for our different programs? And then also looking at the data forms. So if there are things that didn't work for folks about the data forms, if they have concerns, kind of revamping those as needed. So as you're rolling this out, as you're using this, as you're hearing things from, you know, different folks in your office, from folks that are using them, please, you know, take notes on these. We'll meet quarterly to kind of go over this, but you can always just shoot me an email or a chat, or, you know, give me a phone call, whatever works. If you're running into issues. And then same thing, you know, with the folks at SitSci, you know, if they're kind of technical issues, you know, they're certainly here to help. So just kind of keeping all of that in mind. So we'll have those 2 working groups. We'll go over the forums, we'll go over the data. And then, you know, kind of once we're pretty happy with the product that we'll have, the idea is to leave the pilot phase and just have this be a program that's available to any BLM site that wants to use it. So that's where we are. I guess if there are any questions to start, I'm happy to ask questions, and then I'll pass it back over to Sarah. All right, I don't think I'm seeing any questions. I don't have my chat up right now. I'll pull it up. So Sarah, thanks. On to you.
Okay, thank you, Nikki. That's a wonderful introduction. All right, we're going to switch PowerPoint here, and always navigating 2 screens. It gets a little tricky. Okay, fantastic. All right, can everyone see the new slide deck? Okay, great. Well, good morning, and thank you everyone for coming. I'm just gonna modify one more thing here so I can see you all. All right. So this is the Bureau of Land Management and Leave No Trace Condition Survey Training. And as we begin today, I'm just going to remind everyone that we are recording, so other staff and partners can view this video training later. My name is Sarah Newman. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Director of Operations at CITSI.org, an organization based out of the Natural Resource Ecology Lab at Colorado State University. And we are dedicated to public engagement and scientific research. So when our team thinks about engagement, we strive to respect and honor the history that has brought us to where we are today in this field. And so as we prepare our minds today to talk about engagement and land stewardship with the BLM, I just want to take a few moments to share with you the CSU Land Acknowledgement, which serves as one way that we honor our university's dedication to education and inclusion in all that we do. So I'm just going to quick pop out of our PowerPoint. And if I could just remind folks, if you could mute your video, that would be super helpful.
So Judy, it looks like you're showing up maybe is not muted.
Oh, you know,
so if you
and
can mute.
I think I can mute for, okay, yep, there we go. Okay, so we'll just put, this video is about 2 minutes long, I think. So hopefully I can, Greg, sound check. Okay.
Colorado State University acknowledges with respect that the land we are on today is the traditional and ancestral homelands of the Arapaho, Cheyenne, and Ute nations and peoples.
This was also a site of trade, gathering, and healing for numerous other Native nations.
We recognize the indigenous peoples as original stewards of this land and all the relatives within it.
As these words of acknowledgement are spoken and heard, the ties nations have to their traditional homelands are renewed and reaffirmed.
CSU is a land-grant institution, and we accept that our mission must encompass access to education and inclusion.
And significantly, that our founding came at a dire cost to Native nations and peoples whose land this university was built upon.
This acknowledgement is the education and inclusion we must practice in recognizing our institutional history, responsibility, and commitment.
All right. So we'll pop back into our PowerPoint here. And oops. Okay, so I wanted to strive to create a welcoming place today for everyone who's come to this training. So thank you all for being here. I will work hard at that. If you could please take a moment with that in mind and introduce yourself in the chat with your name, your organization, or your BLM site, maybe your role, and share with us something about you, like your favorite way to have fun on BLM lands. We'd love to get to know you all better, and we'll share some of those fun ways in just a moment. And then also, if you came, as Nikki said, to the training with any questions or concerns already, please go ahead and put those in the chat as well. We're going to have 3 different opportunities throughout today to do Q&A to kind of break up the content. So we will make sure to try and address those during the Q&A. So I'll just give you all a quick moment to add some fun stuff into the chat about yourself. And Greg, since you're monitoring the chat, would you mind sharing a few fun ways when you start to see those come in?
Yeah, you bet. We've got rafting so far and hiking with family and all kinds of fun things coming in. So thank you all.
Awesome. We have a 2-hour training block scheduled here. And I want to make sure we keep two things in the front of our minds. One is the fun and excitement that it is to explore and play on BLM lands. And the other is just respect for those peoples who have come before us and who are using the land now and have in the past, because I know that that's an important part of the work that you all do and the work that we do here at CITSI. So let's have a little bit of fun today, hopefully, because the stewardship of public lands should be fun as much as it can be. It's always the tough parts too, but okay, so why this training and why now? So first we all kind of want to be able to enjoy beautiful spaces that the public lands at the BLM provide, both now and in perpetuity. The vastness of public lands, as you all are more than familiar with, means that paid staff cannot possibly monitor every inch of every land at the frequency they would like all by themselves. And so that means we really do need to rely to some extent on visitor stewardship to keep those lands beautiful. The training we prepared today is really geared towards you, the staff at BLM, and also your partner organizations who are dedicated to engaging visitors in stewardship at these lands, and many of you are already doing that work. So what you can expect in the next 2 hours is that I have about an hour of content to share, but I definitely don't want to be the only one talking today. So we will start with the goals of the project and talk about some best practices that are specific to this project, but could be applied in other citizen science contexts for success with implementing projects at this scale. We'll take some time to answer questions, and then we'll take a short 10-minute break to just stretch. And then after the break, we'll talk about how to use the app specifically and explore data, and then talk about a few final tips and logistics. If there's time at the end, we will also have an opportunity to maybe practice either with the app or practice dialoguing with visitors. We'll kind of talk about that as a group and see what's useful to all of you. I'm open to suggestions there. And then there will be, like I said, I think 3 Q&A opportunities throughout. So we'll keep our group interactions to those Q&A sections so that people who are watching this as a video later can have a smoother experience, hopefully watching it. Okay, so the Leave No Trace Condition Survey project is a partnership between 3 organizations. The Bureau of Land Management, of course, who's created the protocols and will be responsible largely for the engagement in the program. Leave No Trace has been fundamental in helping get this idea off the ground and organizing all of these different partner groups. They will also be helping with facilitation and engagement. And then CITSI, which is an organization I mentioned at CSU, and we have a long-standing website and mobile app for public engagement in science for many projects, and so we've helped provide the technology for this particular project. We also do a lot of consulting and training on public engagement in science work, which is partly why we're doing the training today. So the Bureau of Land Management and Leave No Trace goals for the project, Nikki touched on earlier, which is great. One main one is to recruit visitors to BLM lands to participate in land stewardship by monitoring trails, litter and waste, and campgrounds and developed sites. The other is to document visitor knowledge of Leave No Trace principles and understand kind of how that relates back to the work that you guys do. Visitor goals, as you know so well, are just like the kinds of things you mentioned about having fun on the lands: hiking, biking, camping, of course, having fun, and hopefully keeping public lands beautiful and accessible to all of us. And so that brings us to the 2 main challenges that we're going to tackle with this project. The first one is going to be balancing your goals to try and recruit people to collect data while they're visiting. And then they are goals of having fun and keeping the land beautiful and being a part of that experience. The second challenge I want you to keep in mind is that this is a pilot project as a way to collect data across all BLM lands to provide that bigger picture view of these different conditions with trails, litter and waste, and campgrounds. So even though it's easy for us to focus on our own site, we also want to be thinking about that bigger picture of all of the BLM land as well, and how we can provide good data for those kinds of high-level decisions. So from these challenges, you all discussed, or many of you discussed, what could be done and created this Leave No Trace Condition Survey project. And this is a pilot project, as Nikki mentioned. I'll say that repeatedly throughout the training to just remind us that this is our first year, so we're still learning a lot. And this is one possible way we can engage visitors to public lands with land stewardship in mind. And it's an opportunity to provide visitors a real way to engage with the land and care for it in a meaningful way. So there are 4 surveys in the project. There is a Leave No Trace Condition Survey, the Litter and Waste Survey, Trail Conditions, and campground and developed sites. And so as we go through the surveys a little bit later, you might find that 1 or 2 of these really resonates with the goals of your site, and that maybe some of them don't resonate as well. That is completely fine. One of the nice things about having 4 options is that it can allow you to customize the experience for your visitors in ways that make the most sense for you and your site. Okay, so going to take a break from the protocols for a minute and just talk about some best practices to set us up for success. So there's probably as many ways to approach public engagement in science and citizen science as there are individuals in any given organization. But the team at CitSci has collectively implemented it and advised on hundreds of projects. We've done work all at the local level, at the national level, at the global level. And one of the benefits of having those perspectives and experiences that we can bring to you guys, hopefully, is that we've seen successes, we've seen failures, we've been the successes and we've been the failures. And that has given us some things that we can focus on to help you guys be the most successful as well. And so the best practices I'm going to mention here for this particular project, there are 4, and they stand collectively, they spell the word rice. So that is the point of that picture there. So all you need to remember is recruit, identify, communicate, and evaluate. And we'll go through what that means for this project here. Okay, so if we start with recruit, the way that this Leave No Trace Condition Survey has been designed is really wonderful because any person at any BLM site could download the Leave No Trace app and fill out one of the surveys at any location that they want to. But we also have to remember that a lot of people aren't just going to do that. They're not going to take the trouble to contribute data without a little bit more incentive as to why they should do that, because they have other things on their mind. Whoops. So with that in our heads, we want to give them a way to be invested. So starting out your recruitment with partner organizations is really helpful, because those folks are already invested in your lands and in the stewardship of those lands. It also can be helpful to focus your initial efforts on volunteers that are participating in workshops or events that you're already planning. So you're not trying to create yet another event on top of something you're already doing. And what we have found is that concentrating on efforts like this, like a cleanup event that you've already scheduled or a public lands day event, is going to help bring you more engaged participants right off the bat, people who will probably tell their friends about participating and encourage them. And it also builds a really positive momentum for the project, which can be great for the volunteers and also for you as the person encouraging the participation. It can feel really good to know that people care about what you're proposing. It also tends to bring in better data, so that is another incentive. Okay, so the second letter in RICE is I, and that's for identify. So identify refers to focusing your efforts on particular areas and surveys that your BLM site could benefit from that will provide the most useful data. So again, technically speaking, anyone could download the app and fill out a survey at any place on the site that you're encouraging. But most likely, you already know that there are some places that you could really benefit from learning more about, and maybe some places that you don't need more information about. So if you and your team take the time to have a conversation up front about what the priorities might be for your site, you're going to be able to pass that knowledge on to the volunteers and visitors that you're talking with and encourage them to participate in those places. What's nice about that is when volunteers or visitors understand why it's important to you or why it's important to that particular place that they love, they're much more likely to contribute and to keep contributing. So it really does create a value connection for them and for you, and usually leads to more success. So one example is that maybe there's a trash can near the visitor center or near the restrooms that is like almost always full. You guys have a plan in place. You're constantly emptying it, and yet there's just so much traffic. It's often overflowing. It's a known issue. You're dealing with it. That's fine. Might be good to let a visitor know, like, we know about that one, just ignore that for now. But there's this other site or this other place we don't have as much data about, we'd really love to get data about, and you might be going to visit that today. So maybe you could take an observation while you're over there. Backpackers are a great example of this. If you have a lot of backpacking at your site, they might be going to remote areas you don't get to monitor very often. So there would be an ideal candidate to recruit and say, hey, when you're out there camping, would you mind filling out this particular survey about campsite conditions? So we'd love to know what it looks like up there, and both good and bad. If it's looking great, then awesome. If it's not, we'd like to know that too. So reminding those visitors that good data is just as important as bad data, not just to report the negatives. Okay, and then C in RICE is for communicate. This is an important one. It sounds obvious, but it's often forgotten because we all get busy with our day-to-day jobs, and it can be easy, if it's not thought of ahead of time, to find ways to incorporate some communication back to the volunteers. And in some cases, you're not going to have a super personal connection with the people participating. So finding ways to engage them long-term through different communication channels is important. So one way can be through partner newsletters or BLM communications or other kinds of channels you might already have in place. Another one, if your site happens to have a social media account, can be you can do social media updates or recruitment, share results of the project there, or early phase observations. And then the frequency of this is going to really depend on your capacity, but we would encourage at a minimum once per season reporting out what is happening. So you might do like a report that you just post on the door, or have something in your visitor center, or do a quick tweet or something like that. And later we'll also show you a spot on the SitSci platform that you can post reports and things like that for people to look at. Also, Leave No Trace is the manager of the project on the SitSci website, and they have the capabilities of emailing anyone who's submitted an observation. So that might be another opportunity to do a periodic announcement or report out. Okay, and then the last letter in RICE is, of course, E, and E stands for evaluate. So again, a reminder that we're in a pilot phase, and you're all testing this out for the very first time this season. So this evaluation part is especially important. The best projects we've ever worked on, even the most well-planned, have almost always had changes to their protocols or their process after their pilot year, often, sometimes even in the middle of the pilot year. It's totally to be expected. So don't be alarmed if you are going through things, you're like, boy, this really isn't working. What were they thinking? What they were thinking is give it their best shot and then adapt accordingly. So be, just like Nikki mentioned, as you're interacting with volunteers and visitors, be sure to take notes about what's working and what's not working. And again, the good stuff and the bad stuff is always helpful to provide feedback to Nikki and the team so that this can be further evaluated and improved for next season, or maybe again this season even. My favorite example of great evaluation is from the Front Range Pika project. They are a long-running project to monitor pika, which are a adorable small rodent that many of you probably know about already, that live at high elevations in the Rocky Mountains, Cascade Mountains, parts of the Western US. And when when researchers and folks at the Denver Zoo decided they wanted to learn more about climate change effects on these critters, they wanted to get the public involved. But as you can imagine, trying to get volunteers to super high elevation sites, which are often, in the case of pika, rock slides or rocky areas, is pretty tricky. So it was not an easy undertaking at the beginning. It took them about 3 seasons or so to really refine all the different details, some of the equipment, where to send people, where not to send people. And that was okay. They eventually settled on what would work for both the volunteers and the researchers. And all of that hard work paid off in the long run. Several years later, both that project, a spinoff called the Cascades Pika project, some other citizen science efforts around pika, a ton of professional monitoring efforts from government and agencies and others, all came together and led to this really important publication in Nature Climate Change. And that's contributed important research to understand how pika might respond to changing climates. So I just want to encourage you to persist and know that it might be a little bit rocky at times in the beginning, but that's completely normal. Stick with it, and you never know what amazing things are going to come out of it. Okay, so real quick, I'm just going to review this section and then we'll take some questions. This morning, so far, we've talked about the challenge, which is recruiting visitors to help understand conditions of trails, litter and waste, and campgrounds, and to understand visitors' general knowledge about Leave No Trace principles. One possible solution that's been proposed is the Leave No Trace Survey Conditions Project. And hopefully it'll be implemented on 8 sites this year, maybe more. And a few best practices that you can use to be successful in this pilot year is the acronym RICE: recruit, identify, communicate, and evaluate. So I'm going to pause there and give us an opportunity for questions. And feel free to unmute yourself and ask, or you can put them in the chat and Greg will send them out.
Yeah, I've been watching the chat, folks, so feel free, take a moment, stretch the arms, and let us know any thoughts on this initial content. So.
Okay, we've got a very quiet group. Give it about 30 more seconds in case you're formulating your question.
This is Nikki, Sarah. I'll just jump in for a second and say that was an awesome introduction. I'm super excited about this project and hope that it works really well for folks. So yeah, just a comment, not really a question, but yeah, I'm pretty excited about the possibilities here.
Oh, good, good. Yeah, you guys have done an amazing job so far, so this has been fun.
Hi, I just wanted to jump in. My name is Will. I work for New Mexico Wild, and we actually just implemented last year a program doing pretty much exactly this, engaging volunteers and collecting conditions on the ground on BLM areas, but also across all the agencies we have. We look specifically at wilderness study areas, but also, ACECs and other areas of concern, and just collect, information on conditions. And, we look at these, the ones you're talking about, trails and trash, but also all sorts of other things like wilderness characteristics, if this place warrants protection for the future, and all sorts of kind of auxiliary data, ecological impacts and things like that. So I'm still formulating the right questions, but I'm hoping there is some overlap with our program and how we can contribute to this kind of collaboration you guys have going with Leave No Trace and BLM, and if, how that would work within our program, so we maybe don't have to have our volunteers download a second app. I mean, I'm fine doing that, but maybe if I was able to get some of the surveys, we can just build them into our ArcGIS field maps and have folks do that, or something like that. But I'm still just kind of learning and intaking, and I'm really glad that the agencies are taking a step to do this. I think it's really cool, and we've had lots of success, and we've also uncovered lots of issues that otherwise would not have been reported on. And I think this is really important to hold the people who are recreating on lands accountable, but also the agencies, quite frankly. So really excited that this is happening, and thank you for so far the presentation.
That's awesome news. Thank you for sharing that. That PICA example reminds me of what you just spoke of that overlap, potential overlap, where partnerships can happen with data. And that is certainly something we hope to see also out of this, is if there are places where data can be combined, or if modifications can be made to protocols on both sides to make the data work together in the long run and make that bigger picture, that this kind of opportunity helps prevent like long-term being like, oh, well, we have 2 data sets, but we can't use them together. That's unfortunate. Hopefully we can work through some of those kinds of things. So that's great to know about. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and just really quickly, I was also going to say, like, I'm still understanding what's going on here, but it sounds like maybe you guys or CITSI has developed an application for this, and I'm wondering, like, we've talked about that on our end, like how that would work. Esri is great, but there's limitations there, and how we could make our own. So I'm excited to see the app and see what's going on, and thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, we will definitely be covering that. Are there other questions?
Yeah, there's a lot coming in, and thank
good.
you so much for that comment and those questions. And we'll cover a lot of what's possible. So thank you for that. So we've got a couple comments. One is just a good idea from Ed to have input and feedback from citizens to the land managers. Thanks, Ed, for that. And then Callahan, I'm not sure about the exact username there, but really a question, but not really a question, but a thank you for the pointer in regard to focusing efforts. They really, in this case, in this individual's case, don't really need more information and data on day use sites, but focusing on backpackers in the wilderness will make the data incredibly helpful to us as managers. Partner orgs are tightly knit with the community, so day use areas would be easy. Targeting backpackers will be a challenge, and we are excited to figure out how to get that information from them. So there's that. And then Mark added a comment to New Mexico Wild. Would be great to hear more about your ups and downs with data collection. L&T is hoping to draw on that kind of real world experience. And so it's great to hear that data collection is happening through our collector and other means. And these are reasons why we're all here sharing these experiences. So that's it. Thanks.
Awesome. Okay. So Oh, Nikki, did you want to say something?
I did, if I could just
Yes,
make a
please.
quick plug here. So yeah, I mean, really the point of this from the BLM's perspective is to complement the awesome things that are going on and also provide some opportunities and tools for folks who want to get something started. So, you know, we keep saying this is a pilot phase, and it is. So, you know, if you have things going on, if this works well or if it doesn't work well, then we definitely want to hear about that, because we're trying to make something that's useful, right? If it's not useful, you know, nobody's going to use it. It'll just be a waste of everyone's time and effort. So we really want to take this pilot year to make it as useful as we can for as many sites as we can. So please do take those notes. And, you know, at our next quarterly meeting, I'll be asking for folks to kind of serve on those subcommittees or whatever we want to call them, to kind of really go through the data and really go through the forums and kind of the process. So really consider raising your hand and volunteering for one of those as you're working with this stuff.
Awesome. Okay, so I know it's been a lot of stuff so far, so I'm gonna have a 10-minute break here in just a second for folks just to stretch and whatever. But after the break, we're gonna dive into the app specifically, and I'm gonna show a couple of videos of how it works and that sort of thing. We're also gonna talk about the data and where you can go to explore that and take a look at that. We'll talk about some logistics. We'll answer more questions. And then if there's time, again, we'll decide, I think there will be some extra time. So at the end where we can decide how best to use that, either more discussion or some practice or wrapping up early, whatever the case may be. So, so with that, I'm going to give everyone 10 minutes. Please don't leave permanently. Come back. So we'll be back at about 10:51 Mountain Time. And I will stay on most of the time. So if you have any questions or things also you can ask while we're doing the break. But I will mute myself for a while. Okay, folks, hopefully you're coming back. Maybe just put a note in the chat or turn on your camera if you're back and let us know so we can make sure enough people are back before we start again. Greg, you might have a better view of the videos and stuff too. So if it looks like people are back, let me know and I'll get started.
I think we might give it just another minute yet.
Okay, perfect.
Looks like we're getting more people, so we're good.
Okay, great. Enough to start, you think? Okay, great. So welcome back, everybody. I hope that you were able to use your 10 minutes well. So in the next part of the training, we're going to dive into the mobile app and how you can conduct surveys in the field. So let me get that going. Here we go. All right, so just to be clear, my goal is to not put you to sleep during this section by going through every single question on each of the 4 surveys. I don't think that would be a great use of your time because many of the questions are pretty self-explanatory, I think. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to discuss the different management goals behind each survey so you can understand where BLM is going with this and leave no trace. And then also we're going to look at a few questions from each of the surveys so you can get an idea of what they look like. And then I have a couple of really short videos. One is less than a minute and one is about 2 minutes. That'll show you how the app works. And then I also want to just be clear that there is always challenges with government and not government devices. So we're not advocating that you go out and download this to your government issued device and conduct surveys, but we do want you to be able to be comfortable with using the app either on your own or to walk another person like a visitor or volunteer through the app if that opportunity arises, or hopefully when that opportunity arises. So, and then just one more quick thing. So, you'll notice on this screen that this is the Leave No Trace Citizen Science app. It's going to probably get a facelift visually here shortly, but this is what you can expect to see if you downloaded the app today. And it is powered by CitSci. So, and CitSci also has its own app. The wonderful thing is that by doing this skinned app, for Leave No Trace, the data collected by the various Leave No Trace citizen science projects will still go into the CitSci database, and it all gets stored in the same place as other projects that are happening on CitSci, but it helps refine the app in a way that's more clear that these are the kinds of projects that Leave No Trace is working on, and it helps volunteers who might be more affiliated with Leave No Trace kind of stay focused in that space. So I just want to clarify that there are different apps, but the data ultimately all go to the same place. And the one we'll focus on today is the Leave No Trace app, because that is the one we want folks to enter data on for this project. Okay, so first we're going to just do a quick video about how to download it from the App Store and create an account. The account created through the app is a CitSci account. So again, you could use that same login with the CitSci website. This video is just under a minute long. It does have some music, but there's no narration. So the instructions are on the video itself. And I'm not concerned about you capturing every detail of this video and being able to just go do it. We have this video available on our SitSci YouTube channel, and I'll share the link for that in a minute. And we'll also put it in the chat so that you can review it later. So just watch it and relax, and you can always come back to it when you're ready to download the app later. So here goes. There we go. Okay, so short and sweet. That video is available again on our YouTube channel. Oop. And this is the link for that video. For that channel. Greg's going to put it in the chat here now as well, so you can copy that. We are very young on our YouTube channel, so we only have a grand total of 3 videos, 2 of which are for this project. So it should be pretty easy for you to find the right videos when you go to that channel. But there is a special list for Leave No Trace. So if we do create more materials in the future, we'll be able to add to that as well. But that should help you and also your visitors. You'll be able to direct them to that video as well, so that they can see how to download the app to their device. Okay, so you may have noticed, even though that was pretty short and sweet, that Leave No Trace does have a number of other citizen science initiatives, which is awesome. So when you download the app for this particular project, you'll be able to see all of those different projects in the All Projects menu. And then you're going to look for specifically the Leave No Trace Survey Conditions project. Okay, and so within the Conditions project, there are the 4 surveys we talked about. Each survey has 4 basic parts that you're going to complete. The first is basic questions about who you are and the date that you're making the observation. The second is where are you, the location. And I should say that once you've created a SitSci account, the who field will auto-populate with your username information, so that's pretty easy. The location is where you're going to add your latitude and longitude. The app can actually find that for you in most cases, but we'll talk about offline use and the challenges of being in backcountry later. Also, then the third part is kind of what did you learn? So this is really the survey part. This is all the questions that the BLM folks have created and Leave No Trace folks have created. And that's where you're going to enter really the bulk of information. And then almost all, I think all of the surveys have an opportunity, or even some cases more than one opportunity, to upload photos of what you've seen, so you can really document the conditions in a visible way. And then with the photo options, you can upload photos either from your phone gallery or take that photo in real time. So we'll watch another video in a little while that shows how that process works. But first, we're going to go through each of the protocols at that high level and just get a little more familiar with them. So protocol number 1 is the Leave No Trace Condition Survey. And with this survey, the management questions are really focused in on Leave No Trace principles. So we're trying to answer this question: how familiar are visitors with Leave No Trace principles? I always get, I definitely have been in this field so long now that I always feel like everyone knows this, and am always surprised when someone hasn't heard about it yet. But it's good for me to remember to ask. And then does familiarity with leave no trace principles increase at the gold standard sites, at hotspot sites, and with leave no trace programming? So that's really great information to know, so we can share the message with others who might not be familiar with these principles just yet. This is a pretty short and sweet survey, and some of the questions you're going to be asked are things like, have you heard of the leave no trace principles? Yes or no. If they have heard of it, on a scale of 1 to 5, how familiar are they with the principles? Have they ever attended a leave no trace educational program? Yes or no. And then there's also option to add a photo here. You might want to just add a photo of where you are when someone talked to you about this particular survey, or there's also a question about whether or not they've seen leave no trace messaging at that site. So if they want to take a picture of the messaging they saw, they can do that as well. Okay, protocol 2 is the litter and waste condition survey. This one's a little bit longer. And the management questions we want to answer with this one are: what types of litter are most prevalent on public lands? And where should management focus education and visitor contacts to minimize litter impacts? And you'll see this management focus question come up on the next 3 protocols as well. This is a really important theme. So how do we prioritize our time and our energy at these different sites? So the questions in this survey are focused on things like your location. So what kind of place are you on a trail, a campsite, visitor center? Have you seen any leave no trace messaging today? Were there trash cans where you saw the trash? What was the level of trash you saw? Like, how bad is it? What kinds of trash did you see? Aluminum cans, plastic bottles, etc. And then there's a few more questions as well in a similar vein. Protocol 3 is the trail condition survey. And the management questions we're asking with this one are: what is the condition of the trails? Where are off-trail or trail widening impacts of concern? And then again, where should management prioritize their education and visitor contacts? So what's neat about this survey, there's lots of opportunities to add photos of what you're seeing. So you're going to get a question, of course, about where you are. If you happen to have a trail name or a route name, you can add it in. That's optional because that can be tricky sometimes. You get to upload a photo of the trail itself. You can put the trail length if you happen to know it. What are the condition of the trailhead signs, if there are any? Are there any unmarked spur trails? Is there a trail widening? And if so, you can take photos of that. You can take photos of the spur trails, that sort of thing. So lots of good opportunities to document what you see. And then protocol 4 is campground and developed site condition survey. So I think this came up in the chat earlier. Some places will be more interesting than others to get information about. Questions, management questions for this protocol are: what is the condition of campgrounds and developed sites? Where are the issues of concern at campgrounds, campsites and developed sites? And then where should management prioritize education and visitor contacts? There's lots of questions in this survey. This is a really great one. They're all really great, but this one has a lot of detail to it because of the nature of these kinds of locations. So you can add campground condition photos or developed site condition photos. You can estimate the area that you surveyed if you're comfortable doing that. And then you can specify, are you at a day use or an overnight site? And then there are different questions in the survey based on those, what you choose. If you're at a day use site, there will be questions about that, the kinds of things you might encounter there. And then if you're at an overnight camping site, there'll be other questions you could answer that are more specific to camping. Other questions types are like, is there graffiti? Are there fire rings? If there are fire rings, you know, what kind are they? There's questions about trees, whether they're denuded, and you can add photos for all of those different observations as well. So you can add a lot of different photos in this one to document different things you might see while you're at those campsites, or I mean, yeah, or developed sites. Okay, so those are the 4 survey protocols in a nutshell. And here I'm going to play a quick 2-minute video so you can see the overall workflow of what you might go through or a visitor might go through when you're using the app to do a survey. This video showcases the Leave No Trace condition survey. And again, it's available on the YouTube channel, so you don't have to memorize all of this. You can revisit it later as often as you need to and rewatch it. So I'll just get it started. Okay. Okay. So a couple of logistics to note that are important for, especially because of the nature of the kinds of work many of us do. This app was developed by folks like ourselves who all got started in field work and doing remote kinds of monitoring and management. So when we designed it with offline use in mind. And because of that, you do have to manually upload your observations when you have a good signal later. Otherwise, the observations will just stay on your phone. So at the end of the video, it talks about that in step 5, upload your survey. There's a screen it directs you to. So when you're out in the field and you're taking an observation, it automatically saves to your phone. And then you can go in later and click the edit or delete or upload button. And then once you upload it, it goes into the CITSI website for posterity. And then it's still available to you. It doesn't disappear from you, but it will disappear from this screen so that you know it's already taken care of. So that's important to tell people. And then second, again, we did design this with offline use in mind, but of course we want to take advantage of the technologies available to us these days. So we have a use current location button that is on the location page. If you are in a place that gets decent reception or some reception, you can often use this to just get your lat long automatically populated in there. But how it works, in case you want to understand the full process, is that first it searches for a cell phone, cell reception, cell tower. If it can't find that, it will search for satellite reception. And then if it can't find that, if you happened to have a GPS hooked up to your phone, which is rare but does happen, it will look for a GPS. But that being said, we recognize that sometimes all of those are going to fail or not be optional. So if you have a GPS with you, maybe not connected to your phone that you have because you are navigating to a backcountry site, then you can always hand type in the latitude, longitude. That's totally okay. And when all else fails and you cannot get a signal and you don't have a GPS, there is another option that is available to you. And that is to add the observation later to our site with the citsci.org website or to the project. So if you find yourself with no way to autolocate, then we recommend that you take a photo of what you want to observe, write everything down that you can think of detail-wise that you might want to include later, and then go to the website, and we'll show you a little bit of this in later in the training, but go to the CITSI website, navigate to the project, open the data sheet, and you can add an observation there as well. The mobile app's obviously the easiest way to do it, but the website is just as good. And what's nice about the website in this particular scenario, when you don't have a good location read, is that the map embedded on the website it's Google Maps, but it also allows you to look at the satellite view there, which isn't available right now on the mobile app. And the satellite view has pretty good resolution, so you can zoom in pretty far and get a pretty good read if you're familiar with the land that you're on about where you were. So that is another option you can use if you need it. Okay, and then one more thing before we pause for some questions, because I'm guessing you'll have some about the app at this point. With BLM sites and many sites, honestly, that we can work in, people often have valid questions about what to do with sensitive sites or sensitive information. And of course, with the internet, there is always the possibility that someone is going to share a photo or take a picture of something that is a historical artifact or a sensitive area that has been asked to be protected. So we recognize that that is an issue. And while we can't protect or prepare for every possible scenario, we wish we could. We just want to recognize that that's going to be probably unique to your site. You're going to know better than we will what those places and things are. So we would encourage you to have a conversation with your staff and volunteer groups up front and be proactive about how you want to handle that sensitive data or those places. You've probably already had these conversations for other reasons outside of this project. Hopefully you have, but if you haven't, this is an opportunity to do that. And we also lastly then recommend that you monitor the data that's being uploaded to this project periodically at whatever frequency makes sense for you. And if you see something that shouldn't be there, then notify the project manager and it can be deleted and taken down. So so hopefully this will be a tiny percentage or no percentage at all of issue, but since we can't say that for certain, these are some steps we think that can be most helpful to being respectful of those places. And then the other part that isn't on this bullet, but as you're having those conversations with folks is, maybe those are the things that you talk to visitors about when you're mentioning this project. So again, you'll know what those conversations should look like far better than we do. So, so we'll leave that expertise to you. Okay, any questions here about the app? And then we'll move on to where the data goes and how to explore it.
Yeah, there's been a great question in chat, Sarah, that I'll share that Danny Ortiz showed. Thank you, Danny. The question is if you are monitoring trail conditions on a single trail, would it be best to upload each single observation, or should we recommend to group observations, group observations for each issue, such as multiple trash sites, illegal trail connections, etc.?
That's a great question. Nikki, I might punt that one to you as to how you think that data might be most useful. If that's all right.
Sorry, I was chatting away on mute.
Oh, nice, nice.
So I got my video going, but not the mute. Yeah. So, I mean, this is something that I think the group talked about a fair amount when we were developing is, how do you, if you have like one trail and it's 3 miles long, is it, each time you see a spur, is that a separate observation or is it a new observation? And I believe the way it's in the app, it's a new observation. And I think that these are, again, pilot site that's going to keep coming up. I think that when we're looking at the data, this is something we can kind of revisit in terms of what makes sense and what's most useful for our management and for getting the data. So, we want to have it where we're getting all the data that we need, but where the data is not so cumbersome that it's just too much to kind of get through and be useful. So that's kind of what we're trying to navigate. So I don't know that I've specifically answered your question, but I think it's one of those things that we're thinking about and a little bit to be determined. So if that wasn't clear enough, then ask again.
Sorry, I'm having a screen issue, so
That's okay.
apologize. I keep clicking back and forth.
I'm
I hope
gonna
that was
add
clear-ish
one
enough.
thing, but I don't want to keep finishing your train of thought because there's another question that I'm working on an answer to in chat. So
Yeah, no, Greg, go ahead and add.
yeah, so the question is from Ed and it says, does the app verify that the BLM got the report? And I was just typing, but I'll answer this verbally and put it in chat as well. So the app, what we call fails nicely if observation is trying to be submitted from the mobile app in the field in a remote location and cannot get it to the BLM, meaning to CitSci on the CitSci cloud. If it has issues, it will notify you that it could not do that. It will remain on your phone as a saved file, actually. And so you can try again. And when it goes up, it's fine. And so the key thing to remember is that when it disappears from your queue of saved observations, it has in fact been successfully submitted to the BLM on the CitSci Cloud web application. So that's, Ed, hopefully an answer to your question.
Any other ones, Greg? In the chat, or if anyone has any they want to unmute
We're
for?
good so far, yeah.
Okay.
Good at the moment, but I'm typing some question answers, so yeah, but
Okay.
nothing new yet.
Okay, great. Okay, so we'll move forward and we can always address more as they come up. So where does all the data go? And what can you do with it? That's an important question to answer. So through the CitSci website, there are a few main ways, three main ways you can interact with the data from this particular project. You can view the data through charts and spreadsheets and observations and photos. You can download the data for use in other programs, and then you can also download ready-made charts for use in reports and presentations, because that can be really a helpful shortcut. So this is the one part of the training. I'm going to attempt to do a live demo. They always make me nervous, but I will show you the different ways we can do data observation. And I'm going to go back to our home page and start there. So this is the citsci.org website. We host lots and lots of citizen science projects, and the easiest way to find this particular project is to go to the project page and search for Leave No Trace. And when you do that, you'll see a few different projects that have Leave No Trace in the name. You're going to click on the condition survey. And then quick note, I'm logged in here and I have access to project manager tools, which are all the things in yellow. Those will not be things that you will see, so you can just ignore those for now. But there are a couple different ways you can see the data. So right away on the home page, you're going to see any recent photo observations. There'll just be a handful of those here, but they'll keep updating in real time. And then the data tab is the first place you're likely to go to explore the data. So when you open that tab, you're going to see a list of the observations that have been made. You'll see the protocol that was chosen, the location, and who observed it. Then you'll have an option. You can look at the map of the data. You can look at the data listed by location, and then you'll have an option to download data. So those are kind of the 4 spots there. And then there's 2 different ways you can look at the observation. One, if you click on the location name, it'll take you to all observations made at that location. And if you go back and go to the view button, it will take you to a specific observation, or to that specific observation. And you can see what was documented. So there will be a photo, the trail length, more photos because this one has multiple photo options, and then an observation gallery. Now there's a couple of funky glitches we're working on. One is that sometimes the Google map, even though it has the right location, will default to the ocean. So sometimes this particular observation does that and sometimes it doesn't. So just note that that is something we're aware of. So if you see some funky behavior there, we're working on it. And then also our photos duplicate, and there's a long backstory to that, which I won't go into, but you will see 2 of every photo that you observe right now at the bottom of in the image gallery. So no need to be alarmed there. Something we're aware of as well. Okay, so those are individual observations. And then the other cool place to interact with data is the analyses tab. Now, it's not going to look very interesting here yet because we only have a couple of practice observations, but I'll show you some cooler data in a minute. We have the list of observations you can choose from. And you have 2 types of data you can look at, numerical or categorical. So in this case, the trail survey just has trail length, so it's the only variable available to look at. But if you click over to categorical, there's a lot more options, and you can actually select more than one. And when you do that, you're going to get a chart for each of those variables down below. So these are really meant to be ways to look at trends over time, and that these will get more interesting the more sites that you do, or more observations you do as well. And then there's ways to download these charts in different formats if you want to use them in reports and things. So with that, I'm going to jump back to the PowerPoint and skip over these. So again, there wasn't that much data yet, so not as much to look at, but we pulled some data from a few other projects for you to see here. So this site is a stream monitoring site that's been monitored since 2013, and it's air temperature, so it's a numerical variable. And you can already see a pretty great pattern. This site gets monitored a lot. It's repeated observations. So there's this great pattern of data being collected there over time. And then this chart is from a bird monitoring project, and there's they collect a lot of categorical information about bird behavior. And so those are showcased here. And again, this has been being monitored since 2017. So there's quite a lot to see. You can start to see those seasonal patterns of nest incubation followed by feeding of the young. And then you can also see these big gaps, which is when the volunteers are not monitoring these particular nests. And then lastly, these kinds of charts are often a great way to catch outlier data. So again, this is the stream monitoring one, and here we have pH being shown at the bottom. So almost all of the observations fall within a normal range of pH, but then we have this weird data point of 34, which is probably a typo that someone made, but it can be a quick way to catch stuff like that. So you can see it before you download the data for analysis. Okay, and that's all I'm going to share about data for the moment. A few final tips, and then I'll be wrapping up. We do know, so one of the things we wanted to mention is that we know that visitor interactions can be pretty quick sometimes, especially those one-on-one kind of things. I got my start with the Fish and Wildlife Service, and I know that a lot of times it felt like I was just trying to spew out a whole lot in a really short time while I had the visitor's attention. So to help with that, one thing that could be done and is something to consider is having a paper sheet laminated either of the surveys or something else that you find useful to show what we're trying to accomplish in a quick visual way so that you can give more information in a short amount of time. And this might be something you keep in your field vehicle or on you so that when you do have a great encounter, you can just pull it out and quick show someone and get that message across really quickly. And the poster that Leave No Trace created for this project, I know a lot of you are hanging it in your visitor centers or other key places. So that is awesome on its own. And it could be something useful to have as like an 8x10 and just have on your person or in your vehicle for when you're not at the visitor center and you want to show someone about the project. So things like that could be really useful to think about. And then relatedly on the website, we do have a resources tab where you can upload all kinds of different documents to share with anyone who's interested in the project. So if you find yourself out there developing things, like you're going to do a workshop and you've created a really cool PowerPoint, or you created a few handouts that made it easier for you to interact at your site, then this would be the place where you could potentially upload those resources and share with the other sites so that they could take advantage of them as well. And you can always talk to the Leave No Trace team about what might be a good idea to put there or not. And then last but not least, we've covered a ton and we've had a lot of good Q&A, but I'm sure there's something that we have forgotten along the way. So these are your primary contacts for various questions. You all know Nikki pretty well, I think. So any protocol or BLM type questions are obviously she would be a great go-to source for those. If you have questions that are more Leave No Trace specific, or maybe about the Leave No Trace condition survey page on the website, then Leave No Trace is listed as the manager of that page, and you can contact that team directly through there. And then technical and help questions, we've got a help button at the upper right corner of our website, and you can always click on that and get access to a form that you can ask technical questions about the app or the website of the sitsi.org team. There actually, I don't think, Greg, you can correct me later, I don't think there's a help button in the app. I couldn't find one anyway. So the website's going to be your best way to get a hold of us there.
Yeah,
okay.
for sure.
Okay, so I'm going to stop there. That is my content for the day. Are there any thoughts from Nikki or JD or other members of, I think Mark's here as well from L&T, that you guys want to share or contribute?
There's been a lot of questions. I'll give Mark and JD and Nikki the space here for their thoughts, comments, questions, and then we can go back to a slew of great chat questions.
Great.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add on my end. I would say let's answer the questions and see what else comes up.
I think I do have just two quick kind of housekeeping things, and then I'm happy to jump into questions. So for folks on this call, if you don't receive kind of my emails for our quarterly meetings, then please just shoot me an email so that I can make sure that you're added to that list. Partners are also welcome to those meetings. So this is kind of our quarterly meeting for February. We've kind of had several leading up to this point, and then we'll kind of continue with updates and things. So if you're not on that list, please send me an email so that I know that. Also, it was mentioned that we have posters. So if you haven't heard of the posters or you don't have those, then let me or let JD know so that we can get you those. Leave No Trace has those right now. And then the last thing is I do have both a Word document and a PDF of the protocols. I know I've sent those out to several sites, but if that's something you're interested in, I will say it's our copy, and not that it can't be shared, but it just has a lot of stuff in there. So, if you're looking for something to share with, visitors or volunteers, you may want to pare it down, but it can be kind of a good resource so that you don't have to kind of click through all the buttons to see what the different questions and things are. So those are my housekeeping things. And now I can move on to questions.
Yeah, sorry, I'll add on to that, Nikki, as well. And that is I have the PDF version of that poster. So if you just want that to be able to print more smaller flyers or whatever, just reach out to me for that. And then Nikki has all of the social media slides that are going through BLM approval processes right now, but we'll have those out to you once those are all approved and ready to go.
Delightful. Yeah, there's a couple really good questions that came up in chat that I just wanted to bring up. Ed, thank you for a question related to accessing photos in a photo gallery on your mobile phone. There are ways to do that on the mobile app. So should you be in a situation where you were having trouble taking an observation, you could take a photo, and then the app does ask you not only to take a photo but also browse through your photo gallery to include a photo that was previously taken with an observation. So that's feasible. Also, Ed also brought up a great question about Gaia GPS. I'm familiar with this app. It's a really fantastic field app in the remote conditions. It does do a great job geotagging photos. What we do not yet support is if you were to upload manually a photo on the website, or using our open APIs, which I'll talk about, there's been some questions about as well. That cannot yet, our API does not automatically detect the meta tags in the photo. So unfortunately, we're not geared up for that yet. Also, good questions about kind of access and permissions associated with the data. Once the data get to the CITSI website and CITSI Cloud, essentially, it's important to know two things. In a public open project context, you can know that your volunteers can have access, view access, and edit access. If typos or mistakes were made, the volunteer has the ability to remedy those mistakes and fix those via editing the observation. Also, all project managers for the project on the website also have view and edit access. Other members can view the observations of other participants in the project, but cannot edit those observations. Download is accessible to all for open public data. And so there is some levels of granularity of control to who can view and access and edit and download observations. So I'm sure I missed a couple, but those were some I wanted to highlight, and feel free to unmute yourself and add to that as well at this time, for sure.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. I might be jumping ahead here, but I was really eager to hop in the app and see what's going on. And yeah, I registered and whatnot, and I'm trying to just join the survey, but for some reason I still haven't received a registration email, and I didn't know if that's going to be a little bit or.
Yeah, we've had some, it's weird. Sometimes it's really fast and immediate, and sometimes it's a bit slow. Look in spam. Okay. And look and make sure, of course, you're looking at the email address you entered when registering. And sometimes it can take, we have experienced weird delays sometimes in email delivery of up to 1 to 3, maybe 4 minutes. So be patient. If for some reason you don't receive that email, do let me know. We'll be patient on the call. Yeah.
Thank you.
So a couple other questions that emerged in the chat that I'll mention is that there actually was a decent set of discussions around APIs. And I did put in chat at some point, it's been lost in the thread, a link, I'll put it in there again. Everything that the website, CITSI website does is actually essentially an API call. And so what that means for those unfamiliar with application programming interfaces is that we're using these open APIs so that our mobile app uses the exact same APIs. Other third parties can actually do some programming if there's interest and desire to program applications and mobile apps themselves using our backend APIs. And so it is feasible, although it does take quite a lot of programming and sophistication. So Mark Eller, and I think I just put this, asked me to bring up our integrations with other platforms. So putting this in chat, there's our link to our APIs. But essentially, we use these APIs to help streamline integrations with other third-party applications. And although in our infancy in that, we're finding that that has great value for apps like the ones Ed brought up, like Gaia GPS. We've also integrated and work with the Zooniverse to share images for image classification. And I'll just tell a quick fun story, since we've got a moment here of time. There was a mountain goat project that spun up on CITSI and identified a use case and a need for these integrations. And so the integrations that we ended up seeking and building was with the Zooniverse. And so this allowed photographers of mountain goats to submit photos either via the mobile app or the website to CITSI, and then essentially have another project work on classifying these images with respect to the amount of fur on the goat, the coat of the goat. And so this was a kind of a parallel citizen science project for both crowdsourcing the collection of photographs of mountain goats, but also crowdsourcing the classification of how much of the body they happen to have fur on, which answered a climate change question related to the timing of when they lose their fur in the fall. So just an interesting, fun story that showcases the need to say we didn't want to reinvent the work that the Zooniverse has done to engage a different set of volunteers in that etch-a-sketch of the body, the classification of those images. And so just an interesting and fun story of some successful work we've been able to do with the Adler Planetarium and in integrating with the Zooniverse. That said, more integrations are of course always wanted and desired. And we continue to try to figure out which ones are most useful to most of our community science and public science projects. So, so that's just a shout out to those APIs, if that makes sense.
The other integration we have that's not quite in the same vein, but still important to note is with SciStarter. So SciStarter is a huge database of citizen science programs around the world, and we're fully integrated with them as well. So when a project like this is created on the CITSI page, there's an opportunity to have it automatically populated on the SciStarter page for discoverability by potential volunteers. So that's one of the things that integration does that's important to note as well. So Greg, I showed some of the goat molt project while you were talking, but if you could add that link into the chat, that'd be awesome.
Sure, I'll do that. And as I do that, I'm also remembering just a few other things to mention. But of course, now I totally forgot my train of thought. So let me put that link in there and see if it comes to me.
Okay, sounds good. Other questions folks have? Okay. Well, if there are none, then we do have about a half an hour left. I hope no one's upset about that, but if we want, we could do some practice, give you a chance to play with the app, and we could be here to answer questions, or we could practice interacting with volunteers, and maybe some folks would be brave enough to role play what that might look like to try and recruit someone. Or we can just wrap up. So what do folks want to do? Maybe put your thoughts in the chat and we can decide as a group, or if there's other things that you think would be useful here.
I'm going to let folks weigh in on the chat, but I just wanted to say thanks so much, Sarah and Greg, for putting this training together. I think it's been, I found it really useful. And I know there are other folks who are going to be looking at the recording, you know, as we kind of get this pilot phase going. So yeah, thank you very much for all the work you put into this.
This has been fun. It was really great to get familiar with what you guys are doing. And thank you guys for coming up with such great protocols, because you made it easier. All right, it sounds like we have one person heading out. Thank you for coming, Ed. Appreciate it. I don't see anything else in the chat, so no brave volunteers to practice a volunteer interaction. All right, well, I do not want to be the one that keeps you from whatever it is you want to do next with your day, but I will stay on. And if there are more questions that or you want to just talk a little bit more one-on-one, I will be here for a little bit longer. And then we'll give it maybe 5 or so minutes. If nothing comes up, then we'll pop off. Sarah said great training. She feels confident using and implementing the app. That's great, Sarah. Thank you. If there's anything you felt like we could have covered better here, or you would have liked more detail on, by all means, put that in the chat as well. I don't know how much bandwidth we'll have for creating more materials on our team, but we'll definitely look. Like I have some ideas in my own head of things I'd like to do some more stuff on. So so let us know, and we can think about how we can make materials that would be useful to you for this project.
And it looks like there are a couple, hearing some chats that maybe a few folks want to stay on for just kind of more site specific questions, but I'll just kind of add, thanks everyone for attending. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate all of the work that you're putting into this and for agreeing to kind of be the test cases and the pilot sites and really try and get this out. It is a work in progress. So if something's frustrating you, please reach out, let us know. Let's see if we can't get it fixed or find a better way to do things. So thanks everyone. Good luck getting it out to your sites, getting it out to volunteers, getting folks using it. By all means, feel free to reach out to me at any time. If you have questions, I try and keep my calendar pretty up to date. I am taking some time off here and there, but I'm generally around, and the folks at Leave No Trace and SitSci have been really awesome as well. So I think that's all that I have, and just kind of want to say thanks again to SitSci and Leave No Trace for working with us on this, I think, really exciting project.
That's awesome. There is another question in the chat. Danny asked about pulling data. Do you want to? No, that's fine. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's just a great question from Danny. Once we get going using this and making observations, will there be a way to pull data for specific units within the overall project? It looked like you could only pull data for specific trails. So essentially, that's a great question, Danny. The way this is currently structured, there's flexibility in how these things get structured, but currently the way this is working is you're actually going to be getting a download of a large, comprehensive, full data dump as a CSV for all sites. And so we've purposely had a lot of discussions with Nikki about this. There's benefits to thinking about this across sites because we are interested in across site comparisons of phenomena as per the protocols, right, for litter waste and trail conditions and campgrounds. So essentially we've bundled them by design in this pilot phase to kind of lump them together. The way to do that is when you do your download is just sort by latitude, longitude, which is an easy way to then kind of in your CSV get a clustered set of those that are, of course, in your site. There's no current easy way to filter by these 8 sites the data, if that makes sense. So great question, not supported at this time in that sense. It is and could be feasible to consider as we iterate, as Sarah pointed out in Rice, as we evaluate this, it is feasible to consider discussions about having separate projects, each with consistent protocols for comparability and standardization reasons that still allow for that meta cross-site comparison, but that let each of the project kind of hone in on their own area. And that's up for discussion as we continue to evolve and iterate and learn together. So.
And something that could be part of even just a recommendation as you're talking with a visitor is the location name field is an open text kind of field. So you could encourage people to put the name of the BLM park or site in that location with the other information so you can filter more easily later in a download. Or maybe that's even a question we consider adding to all the surveys, like what BLM site are you at, and have a drop down of the the 8 that we're working with or something, so that it becomes a filterable field down the road as well. So that's a great question. But this is kind of what the download looks like. Not very exciting with only 3 observations, but you can see all the different data there.
So Danny added a great question while we were chatting about the download that I think is really useful. And that is so there's actually a lot of emerging questions coming from Danny here relatedly that are very useful. So one is that there's these certain naming conventions like SRSJMNM _ Eisenhower Trail, same SRSJMNM _ Pinyon Campground. Love it. We have found over the 15 years of doing this that those naming conventions are super helpful, and that consistency in naming conventions really help make sense out of the information for once you're analyzing the data in your download context, and also visualizing and understanding the data for the volunteers on the web application. So yes, encourage that. And I also, there's a comment about drop downs would be great and most helpful. That is also feasible. And we recommend, so Nikki and the whole BLM team had many conversations over the summer about that. And we can support drop downs, but for this project and this pilot, we've recognized and wanted to honor the fact that our visitors are going to many different places, and we want to give them that opportunity and flexibility. So that's feasible, but at this stage, we're focused on opportunistic observations as opposed to repeat observations in a drop-down menu where you choose where you went. Something that SITSI supports, but focused on that. Yeah.
That's a good point. And I wonder if maybe even if there isn't a drop down, maybe just adding a field on every survey that says what park are you at for now could be a good in between phase.
Boy, that's really great.
It might still not, like you're subject to spelling errors and things like that, but it would give at least an option. So.
Great suggestion.
Maybe unmute too. I think if there are other questions out there, feel free to just unmute, or I think that you can also raise your hand. Or comments.
A couple quick questions, and this is going to go to both Nikki and Sarah and Greg. So usability, when you're interacting with somebody, where are you looking at focusing, promoting this? Like visitor centers for BLM? If you're out on trail or at trailheads and come across people and are describing it to them, there's no way for them to download the app and then join to use observations on that day. So then they have to remember all the information to take home with them, sign up, join, and then use it the next time they go out.
So that's a good question, Sean. So for context, Sean is working with us here at CSU this semester, testing out usability of all kinds of things for SITSI. And so this is one of the things we've asked him to sit down on to learn more about how this kind of project gets off the ground and what it looks like. But also he is active in visiting all kinds of cool places. So I know he has an investment in traveling to some of these sites in the future, maybe. So you're right that if you're really in the backcountry, there's a good chance people aren't going to be able to download the app right away. But if you're at a visitor center, that kind of place, which is, I think, where a lot of these interactions will happen probably, then they would potentially have that opportunity. I think that's another good reason. In fact, I'll show to have copies of, for the staff and volunteers that are active in this project, to have copies of, say, the poster or something with them. So what we didn't point out on the poster, but a lot of folks know about, wait, which direction am I going here? Sorry, guys. We did include a, gosh, this is awful, sorry. A QR code for the project apps. Where is it? There we go. So there are 2 QR codes on all the posters, one for Apple Store and one for Google Play. So that if you had this kind of thing with you, you could say, oh, just take a picture of this poster. You can check it out later. Or they could actually pull up with the QR code right away and have it that way as well. So from, an even simpler option I've seen with other kinds of citizen science projects is having something about the size of a business card that you keep with you. And then when someone, you have a good engagement with someone and they're excited, you can just hand them the card and say, yeah, go check it out, when you get back wherever you are, to the office or something like that. So good questions. Yeah.
I think if I can add to that a little bit. So, I mean, one thing about BLM is, we're not really the Park Service. So we have few visitor centers, and many of our, visitor centers or field offices are going to be physically removed from our land. So we're not kind of the same setup where someone's going to go to a visitor center, get their information and go do their hike. Often you're going to, a trailhead or a campsite or whatever, and you may not really have any interaction at a site previously, with BLM. We also, cover a lot of land and we don't have a lot of staff. So, when you get to your site, it's not all that likely that you're necessarily going to see a park ranger or run into someone, from the BLM on the trail. So with that, our approach to this is really to kind of catch people where we can and where they do interact with BLM and hopefully get the word out that way. So we're using a lot of our partner groups that do have, social media followings or might have events. So there's been talk at some of the sites of, if you have a booth at a farmer's market, that might be where you get the information about this. So I think more often, well, I mean, I guess we'll see, right? This is the pilot phase, we'll learn. But I think often folks are going to be learning about this at some sort of organized, group with a partner group. You're going out to volunteer, you're following the partner group or BLM on social media, or you've, seen a booth somewhere, or, you have gone into a field office or something as you're planning your trip. So, certainly, being remote is part of the issue. And I think that's kind of been brought up, but the idea is to hopefully, kind of catch folks as they're learning about BLM and as they're kind of planning their, excursion, whatever it is, versus necessarily like catching people at the trail and encouraging them to download the app and use it there. Certainly that can happen, but that's just given the setup and the way that we work, that's a little bit less likely.
Awesome. Thank you, Nikki. That's great. And JD, there was a question in the chat about posters. I wonder if you want to respond to that one. It says, do you know when we'll be receiving copies of the posters? And is there a PDF version available if we need to print more or want to include it in an email?
If you send an order to me, you should have already received them. But if you didn't receive them for some reason, would you email me directly so that we can see what happened to those? We have tracking numbers and everything for all of those that got shipped out. So just email me directly and we'll see what we can do. And then yes, I do have a PDF version of that. So again, if you all would just email me directly, if you need that, I'll send you that PDF for use on to be able to
I believe that I actually have the poster container right here in my lap.
Oh, okay, good. And then, like I said, there are social media slides that will get sent to all of you then as well, that you'll be able to use on Facebook and Instagram once they're all approved through your BLM main offices. And those are geared towards recruiting data collectors, obviously. So yeah. You're muted, Sarah.
Thank you. Nikki, have you guys discussed like reporting out or like thoughts on that, initial thoughts yet on what you want to do to share data back?
Yeah, we haven't. So, my plan is we kind of decided as a group that quarterly was, a kind of just enough, but not too much meeting for the group. So this is our February meeting. We'll have another one in May. And at that point, we'll kind of start talking about those kind of, subcommittees or groups or whatever that I've talked about. I think we'll kind of have one that's looking at the forms and one that's looking at data. So the hope is that, this fall-ish or sometime, maybe early winter, kind of when we have enough data to really start looking at that, we'll have a group of folks that are really kind of looking at that and saying how useful it is and making tweaks. And then at that point, hopefully we can do, I'd like to do something kind of from the national level in terms of a report out in terms of, what we've done. And then certainly folks, if you have specific things at your site, I'm happy to help support, get things out for specific sites to, volunteers or groups or staff or kind of whoever needs to see that. So that's kind of as far as we've gotten with the planning. And I think the main thing will be kind of identifying the folks that, are really interested and have the time and capacity to help move that forward, kind of, with the same idea of the small group that we had that worked on the forums. So yeah, to be determined, but our next meeting will be focused on kind of starting to get the ball rolling just in terms of who will be able to help out with those kind of 2 ongoing efforts.
Awesome.
And I had a quick question for Nikki. So my volume was all the way down when I first joined and I missed your introduction. So I would love to get that information. I did write down your email, but I would like to stay in touch and be able to contact you in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. So I can maybe just put my intro in again. So I'm with the Bureau of Land Management. I'm on a long-term detail right now as an education specialist. And one of the things I'm covering is citizen science. So that's kind of my nexus with this, citizen science and actually outdoor ethics as well. So yeah, my background is as ecologist and science coordinator out in Western Colorado. And I've done a lot of citizen science stuff and science stuff in general. So hopefully that's enough of an intro, but yeah, feel free to shoot me an email. I'm happy to chat more.
I will definitely be reaching out.
Okay,
Pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, you too.
So just a quick time check. We've got about 4 minutes till the hour. So jump in if you have any last minute questions. Now's the good time. And while we're waiting, I'll just share a fun story. So I have dreams to take my family to Alaska to do some sort of exploring at some point. And I was looking up some stuff this weekend for fun and noticed that one of the tours that we're looking at had citizen science incorporated into the piece. And I was thinking, oh, that's so great that even, these tours, I've seen other tourism groups from time to time do it, but it's cool to think that at some point, a group taking a tour to a BLM monument or something might include this as part of their tour as well. So I don't know how often that happens, but. All right, well, again, I know you have 3 more minutes. Feel free to chat if you want to, but if you need to get going, I will make it official that we won't be offended if you pop off at this point at all. Thank you all for coming.
Yeah, thank you so much for all the fantastic feedback and willingness to iterate and work through this. The return on investment's huge, and there's also a lot of deep hard work that just has to get done to make these things really fly. So we really appreciate the time y'all take today to help make this project and initiative fly. So,
and hopefully you're all safe from the crazy weather that's walloping the whole West, apparently. You getting a lot of snow down there, Mark?
Yeah, we are. It looks like it's tailing off a little bit, but it's cold now. We've dropped 20 degrees, I think. Since
oh, wow.
Talking. Yeah.
Wow. How about you, Nikki? Are you guys getting much snow out west right now?
Out in Junction, no, it's I think it's the calm before things get going here. It's pretty warm out right now and sunny, but yeah, I think maybe later on tonight is when it's really supposed to start. So yeah, right now it's beautiful.
Well, that's good. We have snow, but not nearly as much as they originally thought, but it is cold too. And it looks like, was it Will from New Mexico Wild that there's a windstorm in New Mexico? And I've never heard the term haboob before, so that's new. I'm going to be looking that up later. But hang in there. I hope you don't get blown away.
And I've already sent some emails out to our dev team to get your verification email resolved. Apologies on that front, so.
Hey, no worries. Thank you so much. I'm really excited and you guys rock. You're doing great work. So excited to check this thing out and stay involved with all of this.
Cool, awesome. With much gratitude. Thanks, Will. Appreciate it.
All right, well, that puts us at the top of the hour. So I'm going to officially stop the recording. And